Alex Marlow, Editor-in-Chief of Breitbart. So good to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
So the Mueller testimony yesterday, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty embarrassing for Adam Schiff, Pencil Neck Schiff, and the resistance. I think they'd really ramped up. Yesterday is the day that finally, after all this time, they're going to get the bad orange man. They're going to put him on the road to impeachment. You could see that the media had already written op-eds declaring that it's time for impeachment. Hollywood was ready to go, firing out angry tweets, demanding that the president get impeached based off of obstruction of justice. But remember, obstruction of justice was an afterthought behind Russian collusion, which was the whole point of the Mueller probe to begin with. So when he showed up very low energy and he refused to answer, I think it was 150 questions, and it seemed like he couldn't remember certain things. He might not have even been fully briefed on his own report, it seemed like. It just seemed like a total disaster and another easy win for the president who didn't even do anything.
So is there anything new that you learned?
I didn't learn anything new that I could think of, but I think that was, I host a radio show on Sirius XM, and I said, because people kind of saying, well, what do you think is going to happen? And I said, I only have one prediction, that we're not going to learn anything new. And I can't say that I did. Did you? You're top editor. Did you learn anything new?
No, I don't think so. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the real question is what did we not learn?
Yes.
It's interesting because just like us, you guys appear to have never bought into the whole Russia collusion narrative.
Right.
Why do you think the media got it so wrong?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it with the left. They thought it was a win-win. It was best case scenario, they draw an inside straight, and the president really did collude with the Russian government to rig an election. Now, there's a logic for them to think that because they have people have talked about the left as cognitive dissonance. They can't square mentally that they live in a world where Donald Trump could be elected president. Because if that is the case, then a lot of what they think they know about the world must not be true if Donald Trump is able to become president of the United States. So they have to come up with a way. They know he must have cheated somehow. And this is sort of the angle that they've taken. But I do think that even worst case scenario for them, they distract all of us. And they take away from his agenda, and they take a lot of time and resources. And people have to put in a lot of effort to push back from inside the administration against these investigations. And I think the left knew that. I think the Democrats knew that. They knew that, hey, if we don't get him, then here's what will happen. We're going to waste a bunch of his time and money and make it utterly miserable to work for this administration. And I think they've been successful in that regard.
So what do you make of the other investigations? We call it Spygate, the origins of the investigation. Obviously, the DOJ Inspector General is looking into it.
Sure.
John Durham is looking into it. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so for me, I think that this is one where you have to investigate the investigators. I don't have a lot of opinion on it beyond that this was clearly a fraud from the start. It was too dependent on that bogus dossier that suggested that the president was literally getting urinated on in Moscow, which was so patently farcical from the start. It was clearly concocted. There's a Clinton connection. There is foreign connection from foreign agents who were involved in the promotion of it, or the creation of it. I want to get answers to all that stuff. And most importantly, I want to know when Robert Mueller knew there was no collusion, which was probably somewhere in the middle of 2017. And here we are in the middle of 2019, still talking about this stuff. These are all answers that the public deserves to get. Now, am I hopeful we're going to get them? Not really, but I do think it'd be great to get the answers.
So Breitbart is one of the biggest news sites in the US. How's it going for you guys?
It's going wonderful. I'm really feeling the energy pick back up. And it's very exciting because back in 2018, Facebook turned down the reach of really most news in general, but clearly the right of center news was hardest hit. The president's personal page was hit. He lost overnight 40% of the traffic coming from the president's personal page was off. And at Breitbart, it was similar. It was a similar setback, and we've clawed our way back to where we were, and that's fantastic because we're heading into 2020, and even though the tech elite would like to slow us down, they've completely failed thus far. Last night, we were the #2 most shared social website on Facebook, just behind Fox, and just ahead of President Trump, and fourth was CNN, which is pretty hilarious. So we're doing great, and we're a top 5 site according to Amazon's Alexa.com. So only great things ahead for us, and we couldn't be more grateful for our wonderful audience and people who support what we're doing.
So at the same time, trust in media is at an all-time low.
Sure.
Do you think these let's call them these giant corporate media, do you think they can recover from this?
No, I don't think so. I think they need to clean house and they need to start fresh, showing some real balance. But the issue is we have free speech in this country, and we've been able to explain over at least a decade, maybe longer, exactly how the establishment media operates, which is they key in on political narratives and they select facts and opinion makers and analysis people who can push their narrative. CNN is a distillation of this mindset with Jeff Zucker, who is controlled, he's the puppet master of the network, and he only has people on who are willing to agree and report on things that fit Jeff Zucker's worldview. And they do it in a very ham-fisted way that's pretty easy to explain to anyone who's interested. And so long as we have free internet and we have talk radio and places like that and new media like your site and our site, well, we're going to be able to explain it, and they're not going to be able to regain credibility with at least half of the country, if not more. So they need they need to really look in the mirror and start thinking of a new business model. But to be frank, I don't care if the New York Times and CNN get credibility again. It doesn't interest me. I don't focus on them at all.
So how would you describe your approach to news?
Sure. For me, there's a few things. We have an open worldview, which is sort of this America First conservatism. That is, we care about the people. I'm reluctant to use the word populist because people want to change that into something it's not, but we're much more focused on what interests the people than what interests the elite. Nationalist. This has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with that we think nation states is a better way to govern the world which is why we were so pro-Brexit, that we think the UK should be out of the EU. We have a London bureau. So it's not just my opinion as an American. We have a London bureau. We're great friends with Nigel Farage, Mr. Brexit himself. We think the globalist experiments, when non-elected elites are governing people who have no say in the matter, it fails invariably. And that is the mindset of most of the Democratic establishment here and most of the European establishment, and we oppose that greatly. And so that comes through, but mostly in our story selection. We have to be very factual. There are fact checkers on our case 24/7. I think we're under more scrutiny than CNN and the New York Times. People are constantly trying to prove that we're putting out fake news. So everything we do is factual, but we will, unlike CNN and other places, we will admit our worldview, which is we're sort of a center-right, pro-nation state, America First outlet, and people can judge us accordingly. And we think that that's the way to do it. And we don't ever want to report a falsehood, and if we do, we'll correct it immediately. Our goal is to get out something that serves that audience, that wants that center-right viewpoint on the news, and to highlight things that the establishment media won't.
So we're here at the Turning Point USA. You just gave a speech. What's your main message to the young high school students that were here?
Yeah, I think the main message was to sum it up as a quote from Andrew Breitbart, our founder, and my mentor who hired me when I was in college, which is a walk towards the fire. And Andrew had a lot of lessons, but the main lesson that he understood, it's hard to pick a main one because he had so many good ones, but that the left was never going to embrace you if you're on the right. It was the ultimate sin is to be right of center. There's nothing you could do to redeem yourself. And once he embraced that, he became very strong and very powerful. And so there's only two alternatives: either fade away like the proverbial snowflake, or walk towards the fire, turn up the heat, get in people's face. Not in don't provoke in a way where, certainly no violence, absolutely not. But you certainly want to stand your ground ideologically when you're challenged. And that involves getting yourself coached up, learning the arguments, learning the facts, staying up on the news, but then being dogged and relentless when it comes to defending your ideas. And those ideas at Breitbart sort of center around America's a pretty good place. Maybe it can be great again, as the president says, but I think that's sort of the worldview that Andrew brought, is a very pro-American, pro-Americana, but a robust defense of it, as opposed to a very polite and placid defense that you get from establishment conservative outlets.
All right, Alex, thank you so much for being on the show.
Great questions. Thank you.
Thank you.